Hey guys, Ethan here from Minton Equipment. Today I'm going to show you how to assemble a heavy hitch landscape rake. This is how the heavy hitch products arrived to me. We're now down to the two packages, that is the rake. So you're going to find the top piece, that's the angle iron, in its own separate box. And then this box here is going to contain the top piece with the pivot, as well as all of your hardware and rake tines. This is a really heavy box. It's like 130 pounds. This is only 35, so we'll break them open and then we can get to assembling. Once you have everything unpackaged, you're gonna want to sort the hardware. You'll find that there are a few nuts and bolts that already have or are already assembled. That's not a mistake. This is done on purpose. So you're gonna have 4 of these shorter bolts and then 2 of these longer bolts. These are going to be used around the pivot and they're longer than the rest of the bolts. Then what I like to do is go through all these bolts and put a washer on each bolt so that the assembly will go a little bit faster. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the pivot there, put it in to the 2-inch receiver, and then pin it into place. The next part is the hardest part, where we have to lift the angle iron up to the pivot. If you do have a second hand, this is way easier, but it can be done on your own. So here we're going to use those 6 sets of bolts that we have separated. The 4 shorter bolts are going to go here and here on each side. The longer bolts that we have here, they're going to go in the end, and the reason that they're longer is because these bolts on the end of the pivot actually go through a couple of rake tines. So that's why those are longer than the rest, and then these need to go here. A quick tip before we get this piece of angle iron installed is to put these 4 bolts in the center in place. Heavy Hitch has recently changed the design and added a second bend here, but this bend makes it nearly impossible to access these bolts once you have it installed onto the pivot. So if we put these bolts in here before we attach it to the pivot, it'll make our life a lot easier. With this piece of angle iron in place, we're going to tighten these 4 bolts that hold the angle iron on. I'm going to use a 9/16 wrench and then a 9/16 socket on a small impact. You can also do this with a ratchet set if you need to. Here you guys can see how it's nearly impossible to get to those bolts on the inside now. You can still stick a wrench in from the back side so that we can tighten them. But to get those bolts in, it's a lot easier to do them beforehand. Now we're gonna stick these longer bolts on the ends, grab 6 rake tines, and then we'll go ahead and show you guys how that looks. I like to start by putting just a nut on one of the bolts on the end. That way this wavy plate will still be held in place, and then we can start attaching the rake tines and putting nuts and washers on these bolts. With all the hardware loosely installed, we can now start tightening it. You can see it's all just a few turns on those nuts, but as we tighten them, the tines will self-align in that wavy plate. Once we get this done, I'm just going to work one section at a time, each direction, and then I'll show you the finished product. This is the hardest section to get done. Everything else after this is easy. Okay, there you go guys. That's how you build a heavy hitch landscape rake. This applies to both the 48 and 60-inch models. But hopefully you learned a little bit from the tips I've learned in building multiple of these over the past year. But you can order these landscape rakes directly from our website, mintonequipment.store. We'll ship them to your door just as you saw at the beginning of this video in a couple of boxes. And you'll be set and on your way to a little bit of fall cleanup or woods maintenance. Anyways guys, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.